Hi, I'm Mike Papantonio, and this is America's Lawyer. While it was once known for its beautiful beaches and centuries-old architecture, Puerto Rico is now infamous for its $70 billion debt crisis. Wall Street, well, they paved the way to this financial fiasco, and American robber barons they cashed in while citizens in Puerto Rico lost everything. What happened in Puerto Rico affects you right here in the United States. Later in the show, Ralph Nader is going to be here to dispel the myths that corporations have been pushing for years about America's civil justice system being broken. So don't go anywhere. America's Lawyer starts now.
This is a classic whistleblower case within the pharmaceuticals. Fraud. Democracy is convinced by this company was what you're doing is wrong.
Corporate media such as NBC, CBS, and ABC is focused on the fact that Puerto Rico is now experiencing a $70 billion debt crisis. What they spend far less time talking about is the fact that America's Wall Street was the major engine for that $70 billion economic burn down. And they failed to mention the way that affects U.S. taxpayers who are directly and indirectly responsible for having to pay for that cleanup. It's another Wall Street catastrophic disaster right upon us. It's not complicated. Securities firms like Santander, which is the 20th largest bank in the world, joined with Wall Street to knowingly and intentionally pull off a massive fraud by selling their worthless junk bond inventory on the open market to mom-and-pop investors all over the island. Santander absolutely knew that they were holding high-risk junk bonds that they needed to get rid of in order to maximize their personal profits and save the company from massive losses. That's what it was about. And what that company did down in Puerto Rico affects U.S. investors in a very real way, because all securities and bonds connected with Puerto Rico are going to be affected by all of the island's defaults. Already, the island's credit rating has been reduced to what they call junk on the open market. And what these bankers did was place Puerto Rico and their economy into one of the worst recessions in its history. In fact, as of today, the poverty rate as a result of unemployment, rising debt, has created a poverty economy that's actually double that of Mississippi. As Puerto Rico plummeted into this economic abyss, its issuance of municipal debt skyrocketed. Global banks such as Citigroup, Goldman Sachs, and Merrill Lynch all made enormous profits from the bank-driven economic disaster. This document, along with dozens of others, shows you the picture. We are effed. That's what they said. It's what management said when they ordered their people to sell high-risk bonds to mom-and-pop investors. Sell the worthless bonds anyway, or go look for another job. That's what they told their employees. They knew they were worthless. The global bankers knew of the drastically increased risk coming at them the same way that they knew of the problems when they cost the U.S. economy trillions of dollars in 2008. Except in Puerto Rico, the banks took their exposure to almost zero before the disaster. Make no mistake, bank or business decisions like that take place on a routine basis here in the United States. But no one went to jail in 2008 here in the United States. No one was even seriously investigated for that fraud that took place in 2008. And because of that, global bankers moved on to pillage mom-and-pop investors in Puerto Rico. Joining me now to talk about the latest Wall Street atrocity is attorney Peter Mouget. Peter, why can't Santander, why can't they sell its own inventory and prevent losses without creating this criminal enterprise? I don't know how to describe it. It looks like just the edge of something that would be considered criminal in a lot of places. What's your take on it?
Well, in most businesses, it would be common sense. Number one, you can't tell your own investors that the bonds are safe, the bonds are conservative, the bonds are appropriate for older, elderly clients needing income, but then internally discussing that the risks are off the charts, the risks are increasing dramatically, the losses are inevitable, we have to get this stuff off our books. So Santander had a plan internally to take their own exposure to zero without telling their own clients about the problems that were coming down the pike, and told them they were safe. That's problem number one. Problem number two It's called front running. It's a securities term meaning in a liquid market like Puerto Rico, where there's none of these bonds are traded on an exchange or the funds aren't traded on an exchange. Santander knew that if they dumped their inventory before their clients, the price pressure caused by the sales wouldn't be borne by the Santander, by the bank. It would be borne by the clients. So they front ran, meaning they sold their bonds ahead of the clients because they knew the prices would get driven down.
Got it. Got it. Peter, now here's the question that bothered me about the 2008 Wall Street crash that was driven by Wall Street banks. No question in my mind about that. But here's what I'm wondering. Has there been any investigation from a criminal standpoint into these people? I mean, do we just let them get away with it, or is anybody on the ropes for maybe going to jail for this?
I mean, Pap, once again, the theme of these stories, whether it be 2002, 2008, and the current fiasco in Puerto Rico, is fraud is cheap. The individuals aren't being held accountable. Even worse, the firms, the fines are slaps on the wrists. There's billions of dollars in profits being made with fines that pale in comparison to the type of profits that are being taken. It's a joke. Fraud's cheap.
Well, isn't it just a cost of doing business? You commit the fraud, you make several $billion, and then you pay some ridiculously small fine that, by the way, taxpayers end up paying, don't they? Because they pass that fine on to the taxpayer. And so what I'm wondering here is why is this a story that affects the U.S. issues as well? This isn't just about Puerto Rico, is it?
No, it's not. The Puerto Rican bonds are held in mutual funds held in the mainland. A lot of the mutual funds on the mainland hold material parts of the Puerto Rican bonds. But most importantly, Pap, you've got the Commonwealth in Puerto Rico that now can't pay for its essential services because of this model, which means borrow more money to pay off the budget shortfalls, and the budgets they couldn't pay year after year after year, and over time the amount of bonds that were issued are unsustainable. And guess who's going to end up paying for the bailout, just like we did in the mainland? Puerto Rico can't pay for garbage. They can't pay for police. They can't pay their teachers. They can't pay essential services, and they can't pay the bonds. They're starting to default. This is ultimately going to get placed on the shoulders of mainland taxpayers, no doubt about it.
And right now, again, I keep coming back to this because it seems like one man with a briefcase can steal a heck of a lot more than a man with a gun on the street nowadays. Because when they steal billions. Billions are lost. And what I just don't understand, Peter, and I know you specialize in this, you've done it your entire career, you're absolutely one of the best in the business. And maybe you can help me with this. Why aren't people thrown in jail for this? Give me the reason if you know what it is.
It's too complicated. The regulators are always a day late and a dollar short. When I say it's too complicated, the man with the briefcase, the way they do it, takes a sophisticated trial team. For example, some of the litigation we're doing in Puerto Rico right now, 9 million pages of documents. The regulators don't have the manpower. They don't have the sophistication to try the cases. They're having trouble when they try the cases, even on the civil side. God forbid the criminal side, which has a higher standard of proof. They need more resources. They need the kind of trial lawyers that can try these cases and win. At the end of the day, the regulators are scared to try the cases. They're scared to sit there at the end of the day because they know they can't win the cases with the resources and the trial lawyers that they have.
Did regulators in this case have knowledge about these problems and these conflicts of interest even before the decline started? And if they did, what did they do about it?
9 million pages in one of these product cases. We know without question that these firms knew that there were problems in Puerto Rico to the point where they had action plans in PowerPoints that they implemented within the firm to take their own exposure down to zero while their clients are left holding the bag. And that's where the parallel track is with 2008. These conflicts of interest, the firms shifted the risk to their own clients. So the clients bore the weight of the losses. These are mom-and-pop investors that have lost life savings while the firms took their exposure down to zero. Santander got rid of their entire inventory of Puerto Rican bonds before the decline, took them to zero, and didn't incur the losses while they left their clients holding the bag, and most importantly, never told them about the risks that they'd identified. Without question, they knew.
Peter, you've handled some of those most important securities cases in this country in your career. And I'm wondering, as you look at this one, is there anything, I read that document that said we're effed. They're saying that we as a company are effed if you don't go out and sell this useless trash. Basically, I'm paraphrasing, but they're saying if you don't go out and sell this useless trash, you need to go look for another job. What is your take on that? I mean, what is your reaction to that in comparison to other cases that you've handled around the country?
I've handled over 3,000 cases. I have never seen the kind of evidence in that transcript where you had a chairman of the board go in front of their own sales force and tell them, if you don't sell these bonds, go home, find another job, told them this is the product I want you to sell. And why, Pat? Because the inventory was on their books and they wanted to dump the inventory on their own investors. So the chairman of the board came in very, very disgusting, vulgar language and told them, sell these bonds, get rid of these funds. This is the product you want to sell to your own clients. And that's after the financial advisors came up with a list of concerns. They said, we don't want to push this stuff anymore. And they were told, sell it or go home.
And we saw the same thing in the United States in 2008, didn't we? You handled a lot of cases out of the 2008 burn down. We saw exactly the same kind of conduct where you had banks that knew that they were getting ready to go under and they were selling junk anyway. What is your take on that?
What we've done, Pap, is it's called self-regulatory organizations, SROs, and we've essentially told these firms that you can regulate yourself. It doesn't work. And what happened in 2008 and is happening now in Puerto Rico is the exact same story. You can go back to 2002 in the tech debacle. It's the same thing. And what's happening over and over and over again is that the firms know that they can take the risk off their books, shove it onto their investors. It's the same story. It's conflicts of interest.
Peter Mouget, stay on this case. We'll continue covering it. It's just no surprise anymore. Coming up, Ralph Nader will join me to discuss the biggest myths about tort law. Stay tuned.
For decades, the American middle class has been railroaded by Washington politics. Big money corporate interest has drowned out a lot of voices. That's how it is in the news culture in this country now. That's where I come in. I'm Ed Schultz. I do the news on RT America. I'll make sure you don't get railroaded and you'll get the straight talk and the straight news. Question more. Earlier today, President Obama
Senate Republicans previously stated that the component responsible for poisoning people in Flint.
There is always hope.
That's what goes on with politics. What are women supposed to do? Here's something else we know.
Between the U.S.
Lawyers
and
at the
Cuba.
ACLU have already filed
Presidential nominee Donald Trump.
following the announcement. Oil prices.
Nobody's talking about this story because it's garbage.
Real, genuine, and significant change.
This is an election that will go down in history.
These states will decide this election tonight.
Welcome to our viewers in the United States and around the world.
Inside Decision 2016.
I've never seen anything like it.
Weirder things have happened. Official.
This is a statement. Donald Trump will be the next president of the United States.
You gotta call it a major upset.
I'm shocked.
This is a changing night in American politics. It is amazing.
If you want to know what's going on in your city and your streets, never back down like Tyrell, and the truth is what you seek. To analyze, investigate from the bottom to the top. You speak your mind like Sean Stone, whether they like it or not. I got Tabitha, Miss Wallace, with the wisdom and the pearls. Between the outrage and the evidence, what's going on in this world? Watching the hawks, watching the hawks, watching the hawks. Listen when they talk.
One of the few ways in the U.S. to achieve justice if you're harmed by a product that can kill and cripple is through our civil justice process. These kinds of cases, commonly referred to as tort actions, allow people to receive compensation for injuries or illnesses if they've sustained due to corporate negligence or intentional conduct. And while modern tort law has been around in the United States since at least the 19th century, only in the last few decades has there been such a huge effort to close the doors to the courthouse for injured victims. Joining me now to discuss the future of tort law and big business's efforts to destroy that tort system is probably one of the most important social engineers in this country, Ralph Nader, creator of the American Museum of Tort Law and the author of the book Breaking Through Power. Ralph Nader, thanks for joining me, Ralph.
You're welcome. Thanks, Mike.
Ralph, let's begin by explaining who has the biggest interest in closing the doors to the courtroom for American consumers if they've been injured by defective products or they've been defrauded by Wall Street or their quality of life has been decimated because of pollution. Who has the biggest interest in closing the doors to the courthouse?
Well, the wrongdoers, the people who sell you defective cars, harmful medicines, fill the air and water with toxic chemicals, endanger you in the workplace. And behind those wrongdoers are some of the biggest corporations, you know, like General Motors and VW and Pfizer and others. Behind them are the insurance companies who don't want to pay out claims, who hasn't had an experience with that. So we have this juggernaut of wrongdoers backed by their insurers who want to keep you from getting justice when someone injures you. Or next of kin, you lose a loved one, and they don't want to disclose the information, which a lawsuit does, so that everyone knows there's a defective product that needs to be recalled or blocked. Or they don't want to be deterred and have to change their industrial and marketing practices. So this is, as Eric Foner, the great American historian, said on the opening day of the American Museum of Tort Law in Winston, Connecticut, tort law is the weapon of the weak.
Yeah. You know, by the way, I've been following your museum in Connecticut. What an incredible idea. I say that, Mr. Nader, because typically corporate media doesn't tell the stories behind what it's taken to make safe products in this country. They don't talk about the cases that you've handled over the years and how it's made such a big impact in this country as far as making products safer. But your museum, I think it's extremely interesting, is now focusing on that. People ought to know about this. Tell us about it.
Well, it's a major liberation movement in America, back coming from medieval England, where someone wronged someone else and there was no court, no trial by jury, so they went into revenge cycles. So they set up these courts and trial by jury. We took it in the young republic in our country, and we took it to the highest level in the world. We have the best law of wrongful injury in the world, which is why the corporations want to destroy it. One injury at a time. They want to block the courtroom door. They want to get rid of jury trials. They want to get rid of class actions where consumers can band together as a class that's been harmed individually to get justice, get deterrence, to get disclosure, to get the government to issue safety standards that are long overdue, to get those politicians in Washington and elsewhere to be sensitive to the millions of people who are wrongfully injured.
Mr. Nader, the myths that have been created by organizations like the U.S. Chamber of Commerce in regard to issues like punitive damages or issues like the idea that jury awards are affecting the economy, or we also hear that the system is a lottery. How do you respond to that after the many years that you have been out there fighting for American consumers? How do you respond to that?
First, there aren't enough lawsuits because it's very hard to win a lawsuit against a giant company like Ford or ExxonMobil because it has to go through all kinds of hoops. You got to get a lawyer, you got to go to court, you're going to be opposed by corporate lawyers who have endless resources, you got to convince the judge, you got to convince the jury, If you don't convince one jury in some states, the bad guys win. And this is very, very difficult. And it's all open. Anybody can walk into a courtroom. The press is there. If you appeal, the same thing. It's the most refereed process of all the three branches of government, where, you know, they cut deals and legislators behind closed doors, or the executive branch bureaucracy, you can't figure it out. But the court of law is the people's key to justice. And if we don't realize that we're underutilizing the law of torts, the law of wrongful injury, just a few months ago, Johns Hopkins University Medical School, the doctors put out a report saying that 5,000 people a week die in preventable situations in hospitals, hospital-induced infections, malpractice, etc. That's 5,000 Americans a week, and only a tiny number of them ever get any justice or compensation. So anybody who tells you we are a litigious society, it is true when it comes to corporations suing corporations on patents and other things, but we are grossly underutilizing this great system of justice and trial by jury. And the more we utilize it, the less Medicare has to pay, the less social programs have to pay. You make the wrongdoer pay, and you make the wrongdoer change the practices so they don't have to keep paying again and again.
Mr. Nader, there are attorneys all over this country like me who decided to do what we do because of your work. I want to be very frank with you. Had it not been for the work that you did and we could see the good that you accomplished, there's many lawyers that would have said, this is not the place for me. You're one of the reasons I chose to do what I do, and there are many, many lawyers throughout this country. I know this is a broad question, but I want to ask you, one of the most important things that you think you've accomplished over these years is America's best consumer advocate by far. What sticks with you the most?
Well, health and safety standards are much improved, all the way from the coal mines to the highways to the hospitals, because lawsuits disclosed all this wrongdoing, all this negligence, sometimes corporate crime, and then the regulators or Congress issued safety standards, recalled millions of products. We know that. We see that in the media. And so just in the auto area alone, according to the Center for Auto Safety, Clarence Ditlow is the director, is an engineer and lawyer. He estimated earlier this year 3.5 million prevented deaths in this country due to the motor vehicle and highway safety laws that were passed in Congress, signed by Lyndon Johnson in 1966. And a lot of that wouldn't have happened without litigation taking the lead and disclosing how the tire companies didn't adequately test their tires. And that information was brought to Senator Nelson in the U.S. Senate. He put in a tire safety bill, which became law. So if we don't keep those courtroom doors open, if we don't learn about this great liberation movement, if we don't protect the precious right of trial by jury, we are going to have a more hazardous society, and more people are going to lose their lives and get injured and get sick. And that's true for the environmental area, for the marketplace of products, also true for the workplace. So that's why we opened the American Museum of Tort Law. If you go to tortmuseum.org, you'll see what a great experience it is, and we want to have touring exhibits all over the country and be able to stream out of a proposed courtroom we want to build for that purpose all kinds of activities that tell you how you can make your life and the life of your family safer, more secure, more just by using the law of torts, which comes down from our founding fathers.
Mr. Nader, in about a minute, most Americans believe that government is there to make things safe. They believe that a regulator with the EPA or the SEC or the FDA is there to make them safe. And then they say, well, maybe if they're not doing their job, maybe corporate media will do their job. And then maybe if they don't do their job, some judge in a federal court that's been appointed by a conservative president, maybe they'll do their job. And the truth is, at some point, do you get the impression that the last chance for a consumer who's been wronged these days is a court of law? Your thoughts?
Absolutely. We shouldn't be inhibited from using our courts. They're all over the country. Taxpayers fund them. The doors should be open. There's a 200-plus year tradition of gradual expansion of the rights of wrongfully injured people and children. And that's part of our freedom. Freedom to sue the wrongdoer, to hold them accountable, to bring justice to millions of people through class actions, through deterrence, through disclosures. I mean, how did people find out about the VW manipulation? How did they find out about a GM ignition switch? Started in the court of law. An injured person found a lawyer on a contingent fee, only gets paid if the lawyer wins for you. And then in an open court of law, no censorship, no secrecy, no back doors, transcripts, the press there, millions of people learned about it. This is the most precious institution in our country. It has the most important democratic institution, which is trial by jury of your peers.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Nader. America owes a big debt to your efforts on behalf of consumers, and we're all grateful. Thank you for joining me, okay?
You're very welcome, Mike. Keep it up.
Finally tonight, for years, for-profit colleges have scammed students out of billions of dollars, promising a world-class education and a high-paying career. But in reality, many students end up with a worthless degree, drowning in tens of thousands of dollars worth of debt. Students have been taken advantage of by these predatory institutions, have generally been powerless to do much about their plight. But that's finally starting to change, coming on the heels of a $1.1 billion fine for the now defunct Corinthian colleges. Another massive private institute is in really hot water. DeVry University has agreed to pay $100 million to settle a Federal Trade Commission lawsuit that claimed the school duped students with misleading advertisements. According to the FTC, DeVry claimed that 90% of its students found employment within their field in the first 6 months after graduation, when in reality, that number included students with MBAs working as restaurant servers. The students deceived by these claims will receive tens of millions of dollars in debt relief and award money, a much-needed first step towards ending this kind of problem in for-profit schooling. That's our show, and be sure to follow us on Twitter at America's Lawyer and watch our episodes online at youtube.com/RTAmerica. Next week, we'll bring you more stories that corporate media just won't tell you. Until then, have a great night.
We're uncovering stories every day on America's Lawyer that nobody's talking about. If you have a case that you want us to talk about, get in touch.